For almost 2,000 years, there's been this incredible 73-mile scar of stone and turf cutting right across the British landscape. It's fascinated everyone who's ever seen it. This is the story of Hadrian's Wall, and we're going to dig into the real reason it was ever built.
But first, let's get one thing straight right out of the gate. This wall is not and has never, ever been the border between England and Scotland. The whole thing is actually inside modern-day England. So if it wasn't a national border, then what on earth was it for?
Well, to really get the why, we have to rewind the clock. We're going back to the early 2nd century AD, to an empire that was stretched to its absolute breaking point.
So, you have to picture it. At that time, the province of Britannia was this wild, untamed northern frontier. When Emperor Hadrian came to power in AD 117, he basically inherited an empire that was just overstretched. It was facing constant rebellions, especially right here, at the very, very edge of the Roman world.
And this is where Emperor Hadrian completely flips the script. You see, his predecessor, Trajan, was all about expansion, always conquering new territory. Hadrian looked at this huge, shaky empire and said, nope, it's time to consolidate. His goal wasn't to push the borders out any further, but to make the ones he already had rock solid. And in Britain, that meant drawing a very clear line in stone. So Hadrian's big solution for this unstable frontier wasn't just, a few more forts or another army. It was something so much grander. It was basically a giant statement piece of engineering.
We are talking about a structure 73 miles long, that's 80 Roman miles, that just completely cut across the entire width of the island, from the North Sea all the way to the Irish Sea. I mean, what an audacious feat of engineering. This thing was designed to tame a wild landscape.
And who built this colossal thing? Not slaves, which is what a lot of people think. It was the soldiers themselves. About 15,000 legionaries worked for 6 years straight to build the bulk of the wall. And it wasn't just a wall. It came with big forts for the garrisons, smaller milecastles every Roman mile, and observation turrets in between. It was just a massive military and logistical project.
Now here's what's so fascinating. Even a project this huge wasn't completely set in stone, pardon the pun. Archaeologists found that the original plan, a broad wall, about 10 Roman feet wide, was actually changed mid-construction. They switched to a narrow wall, about 2 feet thinner, probably a practical decision to speed things up and save on materials. And you can literally see this change today. It's incredible. Right here, you can see the history written in the stones. The narrower wall is sitting right on top of the wider foundation they had already laid. It's like a perfect snapshot of Roman engineers changing their minds almost 2,000 years ago. Okay, so they built this unbelievable structure, but its real purpose went so far beyond just being a physical barrier. It was a really complex and sophisticated tool of the Roman Empire. A Roman source, the Historia Augusta, puts it about as bluntly as he possibly can. It says, Hadrian built the wall, quote, to separate the Romans from the barbarians. I mean, it was a clear, unambiguous line marking the edge of what they considered the civilized Roman world.
But it was so much more than just a barrier. It wasn't really designed to stop a full-on invasion. It was all about control. It would slow down raiders for sure, but more importantly, it funneled all traffic through these guarded gateways where people could be taxed and monitored. It was basically a customs post. And of course, it was a massive statement of propaganda, a huge psychological barrier between the order of Rome and the wilds beyond. And you have to imagine this. The wall wasn't the weathered gray stone that we see today. No, evidence suggests it was actually plastered and then whitewashed. It would have been this gleaming white barrier, reflecting the sun, visible for miles and miles across the rugged landscape. I mean, can you imagine? Talk about a breathtaking statement of Roman power, their engineering, and their absolute will to control this land. And the Romans were clever, really clever. In front of the wall, they dug these defensive pits called cippi, and they filled them with sharpened, tangled-up branches. It was basically the Roman equivalent of barbed wire, designed to slow down anyone trying to attack and hold them in range of the defenders on the wall. The placement of the wall was also genius. Look at this. It was built along the natural high ground, along these ridges, giving its garrison of nearly 10,000 soldiers a commanding view of everything. The entire frontier effectively became one long, 73-mile observation deck. Eventually, the Romans did leave Britain, but the wall's story was far from over. Its journey through the next 2 millennia is, in some ways, just as compelling. So after the legions sailed away around 410 AD, The wall was just abandoned. And what happens to a giant abandoned structure? It becomes the world's most convenient pre-cut quarry for the locals. For hundreds of years, its stones were carted off to build everything from farmhouses and churches to roads. The monument was slowly being dismantled.
The wall's journey through time is just incredible when you think about it. It's built in AD 122, abandoned around 410, and then it just falls into ruin. It wasn't until the 1830s that this one guy, a lawyer named John Clayton, started buying up the land to preserve what was left. His foresight is a huge reason we have it today, and why it was eventually named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987.
And what a sight it is. Today, the wall stands as Britain's largest Roman artifact. It's a cultural icon, and it's a stunning, powerful reminder of an empire that shaped the world, snaking across some of the most beautiful and wild landscapes in the country.
You know, in the end, Hadrian's Wall was so much more than just a defense. It was a tool for control, it was a symbol of power, and it was an attempt to define the very edge of civilization. And it leaves us with a pretty big question. 2,000 years from now, what will our modern borders say about us?